Hey guys, so you're here because you're curious what 7 things a landlord looks for in a tenant, right? So I know because I've leased so many properties in my life, I've moved so much, not to mention I've helped hundreds of people get into homes. So when someone's applying for a house because they want to rent or lease a house, I know that filling out the application and submitting your application can seem kind of scary because maybe you have less than perfect credit, maybe you don't make traditional income that a landlord likes to see, or a variety of other things that could impact a landlord's decision on accepting you or accepting your application. So there are other ways that you can get into a house. It doesn't have to just be the traditional way. We all know that in real estate you can get creative, and hey, if you can make a deal between a tenant and a landlord, that's all that needs to happen. There aren't any rules set in stone. So I like to let my clients know that there are other things that we can use to persuade a landlord to go ahead and approve my client to get them into a home. So let's dive right in. The number one thing is, obviously, you want to have a decent credit score. Now, in most situations, if your credit score was amazing, you wouldn't be renting, you'd be buying, right? But buying a house, it's not always the perfect time for everybody to buy a house. Sometimes you're buying a house, sometimes you're renting a house because you are in a temporary situation. Maybe you don't really know exactly where you want to live yet. There's a million different reasons why you would choose to rent a house over buying one. So if your credit score is less than desirable, and what I mean by that is most landlords want to see a 700 or above credit score. Now, if you have a 700 credit score, you probably are buying a house. But if not, and you have a 700 credit score, it's going to be much easier for you to rent a property than somebody else. Anything under 700 really isn't considered that great to the landlord. Some people, if you're used to having, say, a 400 or 500 or 600 credit score, maybe in the low sixes, and you've managed to get your score up to 660, you might be feeling really, really good about your credit score. But when a landlord sees 660, they're not that impressed, right? So what do we do to impress the landlord if your credit score isn't perfect in their eyes? The second thing is they want to see a steady income. Now, the first thing, as a general rule of thumb across the board, pretty much nationwide, is a landlord wants to see that you make 3 to 4 times the rent. Now, number one, that is combined household income. So if you and your roommate or your significant other or your spouse together make 3 to 4 times the rent, then you're pretty okay. So let's say you want to rent a place that's $2,000 a month. The landlord wants to see that you make 3 or 4 times the rent or more. Now remember, not every house is the same, not every landlord is the same. So one landlord might be okay with 3 times the rent, but another landlord, they have the right to say that they want to see 5 times the rent maybe. But as a general rule, 3 to 4 times will do it. So to rent a $2,000 house, if you and your roommate make $6,000 to $7,000 a month combined, then you should be okay. Now, what do they want to see as far as verifying your income? They would like to see that you're a W-2 employee, okay? That you get pay stubs and they know that you're going to be paid on time every time by your employer, and they don't have to worry that you're going to come up short for rent. Now, not everybody's a W-2 employee. Nowadays, we've got a lot of people that are self-employed. Maybe you make a certain amount as a W-2 employee, but then you also have a side hustle. Maybe you get child support. Maybe you're getting a draw off of some type of financial portfolio or anything like that. There's a lot of different ways people get income, but a landlord wants to see consistency. So you want to provide bank statements. There's a few different things that you can provide to show. So any documents that you can get together that can confirm and show the landlord that you make this consistent income, that's what we want to provide. Another thing is, this is a little tip on the side. If you make cash tips, if you do any type of job where you're getting paid in cash, you want to make sure that you are taking that cash to the bank and depositing it every single time, no matter how big or small it is. Because you want to have this consistently showing every single week, every month, so that when you go to apply to a landlord and you say, hey, I don't have a W-2, pay stub. I'm not a W-2 employee, but I do have all of my bank statements showing that every single Friday, like clockwork, I go to work and I deposit my tips every single week. That's what they want to see. The third thing that you can provide to a landlord that's going to help persuade them to approve you is on-time past rental payment history. Okay, so maybe you're not a W-2 employee and maybe your credit's not that great, but at the end of the day, if you always pay rent on time, a lot of times that's all a landlord wants to see. So let's say for the past 3 years, maybe you were in an apartment for a year or so, and then maybe for the past year and a half, you've been renting a house down the street, whatever it is. Even if you were just renting a room from your friend's place or out of your parents' place, whatever it was, you need to pull all of your past payment, your rental payment history, okay? So if every single month on the first of the month you pay rent like clockwork no matter what, you can pull that from your banking institution. If you can't pull it online, you can go in and you can get a banker to pull this for you. Print it out and then supply that to your realtor so they can add it to your renter's package when you're going and applying on future homes. The fourth thing is, if you have a really good referral from your previous landlords, this is a huge help. Now, sometimes when you're applying for houses, the property management company or the landlord isn't going to reach out on their own and really dig and try to get a hold of your past landlord to find out how well you were as a tenant and how well you paid rent. But you can be proactive in this area and you can go ahead and have your landlord or property manager have them write up kind of like a letter of recommendation for you, and they can go ahead and just say that you've been a great tenant, that you were always cooperative, that you kept the place clean, you helped maintain everything, that you were easy to work with when it came to repairs and maintenance, and that you always paid on time. Now, if you didn't do any of those things, obviously we're not going to bring attention to those and you won't be able to get this letter. But if you can get this letter from your previous landlord, that would be a huge, huge help. We would just add that into your renter package and it would become part of your presentation. The fifth thing is, maybe you don't have that great of credit and maybe your income isn't fabulous, but if you have a good rental history, meaning you don't have any evictions, you've never broken a lease, let's say you don't have anything on your criminal background and you don't have any bankruptcies or anything, any significant flaws in that area, that is hugely going to work in your favor. So, let's say you don't have that great of credit, but the landlord sees you don't have any prior evictions and you always pay your rent on time, that might be enough to influence their decision. The sixth thing is your criminal background check. So you wouldn't believe it, but there are a ton of people out there that have something on their criminal backgrounds, even if it's an accumulation of speeding tickets. Maybe they got arrested for, I see people that were arrested as a minor in possession back when they were 17 and they're 35 now, and it's sitting on their credit and they haven't had the means or the funds to get it expunged. So there's a lot of different things that landlords see when they pull somebody's credit, and if your criminal background check is clean, that's going to work in your favor. And the seventh thing is, I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. Sometimes there's people where their whole situation they've got a lot of things working against them, but for the past several months or year, they're really working on rebuilding their credit, and we've really gone to bat for them with the landlord, and the landlord's really, really considering them, but there's other applicants out there that are better qualified, or maybe there's somebody that's willing to move in sooner than my client or something along those lines. It is very, very common for a landlord to ask for a double or triple deposit. So typically when you move into a rental property, they're going to ask you for a deposit in the amount of 1 month's rent, and then they also want you to put down 1 month's rent before you can move in. But if your credit is less than desirable, sometimes a landlord will ask for a double deposit. So let's say the house you want to rent is $2,000 a month. They would typically require a $2,000 deposit. But if your credit's not that great, they might tell you, hey, we'll go ahead and let you have this house if you're willing to put down an amount a double deposit in the amount of $4,000 or sometimes $6,000. Now, at that point in time, I usually have a talk with my client, because if you're going to put down a triple deposit plus first month's rent, you almost have enough to buy a house. You have a down payment for a house right there sometimes. But if you definitely need to rent a house, sometimes that double or triple deposit, if you have the funds to provide that, that can go ahead and secure the lease and get you the house. So I hope these tips helped you out. Just know that whenever you're going after a house, even if you do have perfect credit, there are multiple applications on every property right now. And in order to get your package, your renter package at the front of the line so that the landlord will pick you instead of everybody else in the line, you need a realtor that can assemble a beautiful renter presentation package for you, so that when you submit it to the listing agent and the landlord, they don't have anything else to consider. They got everything they need right in front of them, and they'll approve you right there on the spot. If you have any other questions about finding a rental property, I have an entire team that can help you out, as well as I personally put my hands on every deal that comes across our desk. So I look forward to hearing from you.